All right, welcome back everyone to day number 3 of Southeast Asia NFT Week. What is Southeast Asia NFT Week? It is part of a larger series of events organized by Access Malaysia, which is the Blockchain Association of Malaysia, as well as its many media partners, including Bitcoin Malaysia, Blocklime, TalkChain, ETH KL, Grenade, App Media, DeFi Singapore, and Imperium Universe. Why are we doing this event? Okay, is because we are here to, as an association, we are our mission is to grow the industry, and by doing that, how do we do that? Is to defomo the space, educate, help people to experience, enjoy the technology that is currently available in this industry. And what kind of industry are we looking at? We're looking at an industry where digital assets live on the internet in these decentralized networks called a blockchain. And if you add all these digital assets up today, in January this year, it hit a record of $1 trillion for the first time ever. It took 12 years for this industry to go to $1 trillion. But guess what? We're 9 months into 2021 and it has doubled to $2 trillion. So the question is, how can you capture, the opportunities available? How can we in Malaysia, in Southeast Asia region, capture the opportunities available in what is clearly a very, very fast growing industry? Plus, all these $2 trillion does not include this thing that we're going to talk about today, that is NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Why? Because all those digital assets on CoinGecko here were fungible tokens, which means one Bitcoin is equivalent to another Bitcoin. Whereas, what are non-fungible tokens? They are all unique. Non-fungible tokens are tokens, digital assets that are minted and secured by the blockchain to give anything a unique digital identity and existence on what we call the decentralized web. This could be a JPEG file, it could be a text file, it could be a game item, it could be representing a piece of property, right? And throughout this week, okay, we have a lot of content. Earlier on Monday, we had Red Home artist gave us her point of view, NFTs, the artist space. Then we invited game developer Ave Gochi, okay, Jesse. Today we're taking a different turn. We're going to talk about content creation. Okay, what are the kind of things that can be created using NFTs in the media space? And who better to actually do this, okay, from someone who, we are seeing this phenomena, right, called Bored Ape. It's been commanding, okay, crypto Twitter a lot. These are 10,000 generative avatars on the blockchain, which probably scarce and has commanded a lot of attention. In fact, today the floor price of the cheapest Bored Ape is 40 Ether, which is today's price, I think 120,000. Practically the cheapest Bored Ape can buy the new apartment that I want to right now. Yeah, that is how crazy this is. Uh, it's kind of like a social signaling thing, okay? Because of the scarcity, right? And also part of it is because of the content that the owners actually create. And we're going to explore more about this later with our special guest. Like what kind of content, okay, are these thing derivatives, okay, to extend, the use, okay, of the NFT, so that fun and people want, okay, to be part of this community. I think that Bored Ape is kind of like really clearly one of the success stories that a lot of people are aiming towards. And but is that the only thing? What else, okay, can be derived? Okay, there are products people are doing, okay, the Bored Apes that they have, great products. And this is happening even right now as we are speaking. There is an auction run by Sotheby's, okay, of 101 Bored Apes, and the current bid, okay, is going for $19 million, giving the average, okay, Bored Ape, I think, a price of 190,000 US dollars per Bored Ape. And this auction, one day time, we're going to see how this is going to create another milestone in the NFT industry. So today we have a special guest, okay, who is an early one of the lucky people, okay, to come to own Bored Ape. His name is Ramon Govea. Seen here, okay. He is the creative director of Myth Division, seen here at the late Stanley's office. He's based in Hollywood, and he runs a production house which basically has created a lot of fresh IPs which are crowdsourced from people who actually want to see these IPs created, like for example blue screens, alternate control delete, which we will learn more about later. And see, all these are driven projects, and what they do is that they then take those to make to translate it into silver screen, onto television, onto anime, onto comic books, uh, and they have very very good, how do I say, stellar portfolio of some of the reputable brands, right, that we are all familiar with. So Ramon, our special guest today, he is also known, and this is how I got to know. On I did not know him as Ramon. I got to know him as an ape, because this is his moniker that he uses on space, self-actualizing American ape. And what was very interesting, Ramon took this board ape that he owns, and then he translates it, and brings it into reality, comic books uh, uh, universe that he has created, collaborating with existing IPs that he has created with Division, like for example Blue Queens. And now Bored Ape also has its own. This American ape has its own comic in the form of Bored Ape Six Yacht Club, right? Which was launched recently. I think 5,600 copies, and it was a very successful launch. It was sold out entirely in 1 hour. It gives people the ability to what's that? View the comics online, right? And the latest project that Ramon is involved in is Waifu Warriors, which is another extension of creating, giving NFT owners the ability to be creative with content and bringing it into what we call the metaverse, creating new environments, new IPs that will take form into anime, into a manga very very soon. So I'm very excited, to have with us Ramon, from Myth Division. Thank you, Ramon. It's right now 2 a.m. I'd like to thank you very much, for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. I'm really excited to be here and speak with you.
All right. So the first question that I'd like to ask you, Ramon, is before we dive into apes and penguins, gutter cats, and etc. When was the first time you heard about NFTs?
I guess the first time I really stumbled upon it was in Clubhouse. I joined the app, and I think a week or two into that, I started joining rooms where people were talking about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and tangentially, NFTs came up in conversation. So I kind of just started listening to the people that seemed to make the most sense, the people that had been in crypto for a long time and seemed to be either at the forefront of NFTs, of the many companies that are now, as you mentioned, they're doing very well for themselves now, just because the space has exploded. So it was a very cool experience, just learning a little bit of the background about NFTs before I dived in. It was right before Beeple had sold his big piece for 70 million, I think it was 69 million.
Right.
And that is really what propelled them into the mainstream. So that really kind of solidified it for me. And I said, okay, there's something to all this. And I don't actually remember if it's so weird. There's this saying in NFTs that one day is like a week because so much happens in the space. But I remember that was really my introduction to NFTs, and that's how I got familiar with it. So I had some time to study before I actually bought one.
Right. So you got you got this collection. You got to know about NFTs through attending Clubhouse, which is Clubhouse chats, and this all happened before Beeple, right? So this is a favorite question I like to ask. Okay, fellow content creators and all that. How long did it take for you to get it, to understand
To
NFTs?
understand it, it took me maybe a few months. It took me a few months. I'd say probably 2 or 3 months is what it took me to really fully grasp the potential. But I knew there was something to it because because I deal in intellectual property and I work with artists a lot. I'm a writer, first and foremost myself. So um, it sort of seemed like, okay, this makes sense, but I don't understand why it makes sense. So it really came down to like 2 months of really listening as much as I could again to people that made sense, to people that were able to break it down for me in understandable chunks and pieces.
So, my next question to you is: was the Bored Ape the very first NFT that you bought?
No, it wasn't. It was a piece called by an artist named Too Much Lag, and it was a very cool three-dimensional animated piece. So it was a 3D character running through a space, and it was on a loop, so it was just repetitive. But I thought it was the coolest thing, and I was like, okay, this is going to be my first NFT. So I remember, just saying, okay, it doesn't matter how much it is. I'm just gonna do it, and it was roughly converted at the time to $1,600, and so that was a lot of money because
Yes.
I had not put anything into NFTs yet. I had made some money in cryptocurrency before, so I was only playing with profit that I already had made from Ethereum and from Bitcoin beforehand. So I bought that NFT, and then but after that, I sat and I was like, well, now what do I do with it besides show it off to maybe, 10,000 people? Because the space was so small. So there really wasn't much I could do with it beyond that. So I knew I would have to sit with the investment, as an art piece just for a long time until I felt like, I didn't really want to sell it. It's like memorabilia now, right? So that was my motivation there.
So, when Bored Ape launched in May, were you
Mm.
one of the people that was already in the know that got a Bored Ape during the minting?
No, no, me, no. I came upon it. I don't even know how long after the minting, but I remember the floor was zero point 0.3 Ethereum. So I knew that it had grown from zero point 0.08. And what really sold me on it was this commercial license, the IP rights, being able to use it on a T-shirt or whatever I wanted to, a cartoon, right? That was from after my first NFT. This was I think it was my second NFT. And that was what really made me want to buy it was, okay, now I can actually do something with this piece that I'm buying. And it's a rare piece, part of a collection. And I can see that the value has already grown. And I could see that the community of apes was so powerful in terms of just like a voice in the space. And I was like, this is cool. Everyone is very passionate. So I jumped in and I said, okay, let me just do it. And it was about it was 0.45 ETH was what I looked at the floor for a while to find an ape that I connected with that I could turn into a story. So I knew going into it that I wanted to utilize it for the commercial IP rights, and that was a big part of why I bought the ape. And so I was going through the floor, and I saw this ape, and I said, okay, stunt jacket, I like that. The 3D glasses, I like that too. And the merch hat was different, and it seemed more, a little bit more rare, and kind of set it apart from some of the other apes. And I knew that the brand itself was going to be iconic. So I said, "This works. I can do something with this. But what can I do with it? What kind of story can I tell?" But the stunt jacket kind of made me think of America, like the colors, the red and the blue and the glasses. Even with the light gray, I was like, okay, that can work as a theme. So that's where the concept was born on the spot as I was buying it. And that was what confirmed to me that I should buy it, is that I had a good idea that I felt could have legs. So,
So what happened next after that? How did Bored Ape seek Yacht Club comic came about?
So after that, it made perfect sense to just do what I know, which was produce a comic book, because we had successfully done it on Kickstarter. So the natural progression was, okay, that's something that I know how to execute very well. I have a great team of artists that I'm very lucky to call colleagues, because they're so talented. And so I knew that was the first part of the plan, and that's what we did. So I immediately got to writing on a script, and it took me, I'd say, a few weeks before I could figure out the angle, I guess you could say, or how I was going to tell the story. And then I finally just started writing, and figured out ways to really engage with the NFT community. Really, at that point was where I had to take that into consideration, because it's just such a powerfully active community of really vocal people, as I'm sure you've seen just being on Twitter. So I really wanted to honor, the community and the people that are passionate about it. So I started just connecting with other apes and just hearing, their backstories and what inspired them about the apes. And just started learning about the people behind the ape without ever seeing their faces. So it was a really unique experience, kind of taking all of that and then being able to put that into some kind of story world. So that was how the comic book came about. Was I said, okay, let's do an origin story first and introduce this character to this incredible world of the apes. And so how do we do that if he's also an ape? So I set him from another dimension. And so he crosses into this new dimension and starts meeting all of the apes, because he doesn't know who they are, and he's trying to find the location on his hat, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? So
Right.
that's his only clue is the merch hat that he has. So he's like, how do I get to this place? And he meets all these wild, crazy apes along his journey. And so that's the story.
Now, is there any tie-in with existing stories that you have already created through Kickstarter? Because I find that there's a lot of similarities. Like, for example, can you share a little bit about alternate control delete?
Oh yeah, Alt Control Delete, sure. So that story. So that's a good question. And the cool thing about NFTs, and this is why I got really excited when I finally understood NFTs, and I finally connected all the dots creatively. It was a really emotional moment for me as an artist, honestly, because financing is always a struggle for a lot of artists, and I've worked with many artists, and a lot of the mentality is it's survive or thrive, right? So it's one or the other, feast or famine. And so it was really a moment where I saw the ability for not just myself, but for so many people I know, to be able to create this kind of freedom for themselves, where you can create your art, and as long as you're able to authentically connect with other people, other artists, you can generate enough income to thrive, really, and to be able to create whatever you want to create without that survival mentality, which I've experienced. So that was probably the most inspiring thing for me, that contributed to my drive to want to do this, just as an art form. So drawing that back to my first Kickstarter, that was sort of my way of trying to just establish a new way of financing projects that I could then leverage into adaptations at a larger scale. So Alt Control Delete is a project that I actually pitched to some studios a long time ago. The biggest one, well, I won't say, but it was a really powerful experience, because everyone said no, right? So the big lesson the big lesson there was you really need to present some visuals if you're going to go pitch whatever it is, a movie, a series, TV show, comic book, anything. It always helps to have visuals already rather than pitching an idea. And so having the opportunity to go in there and pitch to these big, powerful producers It was a really humbling experience. So after that, I said, okay, I need to find a way to create this myself and come back and show them. And sort of, so Kickstarter was that, crowdsourcing was the opportunity there. And so I just kept repeating it as I got better and better, and financing more and more books. And eventually I didn't want to go back. I was like, oh, I don't need to go back to them and get permission
Right.
to make my project now. I can just continue providing value to the people who have already backed it, and we can keep doing this. So that's essentially what NFTs are for me. It was sort of an extension of that very same, I guess it's a business model now too, but that very same way of connecting with the community, sharing cool content, and then just making sure that they're happy with what they're receiving. And so as long as you're doing that, this is such a huge opportunity. So Apes was sort of my gateway to that. And so I connected this story with some of my other stories as a way to just kind of build out that universe. And that's where we're taking all of this. It's together one big, adventure into many worlds.
So my takeaway from that is that traditionally, if you wanted to create something like alternate control delete, right, you would need to pitch it to a big studio. But what Kickstarter allow you to do, it's basically use the internet to engage directly, with the audiences. Do they want
Correct.
it? And then they
Direct to
got the
consumer.
idea. So you don't need to get the permission of the studio to make something happen.
Yeah.
And now
Well,
NFTs.
exactly. And the reason that that's so powerful is because the studio wants an audience anyway. So if you come to the studio with an audience already built in, you're much more valuable to them. So now, if you build enough of an audience and you're able to have them sort of feed the ecosystem of content coming out, whether that's just comics or just art or
Right.
or films or television, you just have to have more of a community, or a community with more ability to finance.
I get it. I get it.
Right? Yeah.
I get it. It's kind of like this the thing that we're hearing, right? Okay, or we have witnessed in the last 10 to 12 years, where lesser known comic book heroes like Deadpool or etc. Right? It was a bunch of founders, right, who were really passionate, build up the community, build up the audience first, and then the studio, right?
That's right.
So, what's the story of alternate control delete? It has something to do with metaverse? Is that correct?
Yeah, very much so. So that was my very first comic book series, and again, I told you I initially sort of saw it as just more than a comic book. It was a movie. It was a lot of different things, because it's so intrinsically tied to the metaverse. It really is what I feel a metaverse intellectual property. And what I mean by that is it's really the story of a world where XP is currency, and gaming has replaced war. So it's blockchain. It's all of these different concepts. A few years before I really knew what they were, and so all of it ties in perfectly to a metaverse experience. And so I don't want to give away too much, but I will say that a lot of our world building sort of ties into what I think will be a really cool thread once it all sort of unfolds over time from a narrative standpoint.
Okay.
But that's essentially what it is this first comic book series tells the story of the main character, who's a professional gamer. And so she basically is a little bit tired of living a specific way. She has her comforts, but to some degree she's a prisoner. So she sort of decides to rebel against the system of the tournaments, and just brings about a series of events that really introduce some concepts that I thought were cool, that I think will lend well to the metaverse experiences that we're building.
Okay, I want to pivot to something which you mentioned earlier. One of the things that attracted you, okay, to get a Bored Ape, was because what Bored Ape did was it granted the owner the absolute commercial rights to do anything, okay, they want, okay, with that, that ape, okay, limited to traits that are used. Ape. Is that correct? Right.
Yes.
So, can you share a little bit? Okay, what is your experience? Okay, when it comes to licensing, okay, and creative content, especially in your industry in Hollywood.
Mhm. So, do you mean in terms of like licensing your own content to someone else, or licensing someone else's content?
Why is it very valuable to you?
Got it. So there's a couple reasons that any IP would be valuable to license, and it's a lot of it is the same reasons that we're talking about the studios when they're looking at a project to greenlight. The reasons are very similar. It has a lot to do with marketability. Can it be packaged and delivered to a very wide audience? Can it does it have a market already built in? Is there an audience that already comes with it? And so those are like the two, I'd say, main points, because at the end of the day, when you're thinking about a commercial enterprise, in today's, well, it's shifting, but what has traditionally been the case is profit is always at the center of the focus for the company, right?
Mm.
So all of the it's interesting because you only really find some magic when it comes to entertainment and films and television when someone took a risk on something, right? And it ends up being this just magical piece of art or experience. So I think it's a mix of those two things. It's looking at what is commercially viable, looking at whether, for us, we try and bring things to market, so we don't necessarily need an audience because we develop as well. So we start from the ground up, from concept to pitch and beyond to distribution. But that's really what it is. Is it an idea that can be brought to a large group of people, but told through a specific lens? Is there a specific voice or story or perspective that comes with that everyone can watch and relate to? So that's really, I think, what's at the core of what we are creating right now.
So, recently tweeted this. Okay, I think like 18 hours ago. That right. That
Yes.
some people are still aren't getting about this commercial IP license. If any single NFT within a collection
Yes.
becomes really, really popular, the rest can too. And that means profit for the holders if they know how to manage those licenses. Can you elaborate on this?
Sure. So if you think about companies that control the biggest franchises in the world, there's only a handful. There's the studios in Hollywood. There's several entertainment companies in Japan, China. Every country sort of has their own, but there are some that are global, right? They are building franchises and splitting off into television shows, video games, and they've been doing it for years, right? They're properties we're probably all familiar with. And just to throw some out, there's Marvel, there's DC, there's down to Godzilla, everything, Hello Kitty, right? Everything that is a major franchise that tells stories across multiple platforms. While those individual stories may be fractured, it's much more powerful to have them have a shared universe, because you're able to bring audiences together, right, and cross-promote and cross-pollinate marketing
Right.
in a way that brings, like I said, brings profit to more people. So having a Star Wars official canon and being able to tell as many shows as you want, as long as you don't step on each other's toes or kill a character that in this story lives, right? You're able to maximize the impact of the story because people can connect. They want to collect these experiences with all these different characters, as opposed to having conflicting stories like DC for a while was struggling with their content. It was kind of stepping on each other's toes, not necessarily feeding the same narrative. So they saw huge, significant financial suffering because of it. And I mean, they're able to make up for that in a lot of different ways. But anyway, the point of the matter is that you look at a model like Marvel or Star Wars, and that is a very effective way of building a franchise that will last over time, where you don't have to hit the reset button, every so often. is the idea.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because what you're saying is that one having a collection, right? If one person actually makes something valuable out of just
Sure.
one within the
Yeah.
collection, right? It actually benefits everyone else within the collection.
That's right.
That's one thing. The second thing, is that what you're saying also is that because of NFTs, the lines are very clear. Is that correct? The lines are very clear, and and because there's a shared truth, which is the blockchain, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
the unique traits, that is attached to them. Hence, the rights, can be very clear, moving forward when it comes to any kind of like disputes or whatnot.
Sure. And that's the power of blockchain. Really, is it's there. It's decentralized, so it theoretically cannot be erased, right? And so you have basically a permanent paper trail. You can something that happens now, maybe someone can get away with it, or things can be changed or tweaked now, but that's going to stay there. And in 10 years, someone could find that by following a route of addresses backwards, right? So it's
Got
a
it.
really interesting time right now.
Got it. So I think right now a lot of people have NFTs and they're listening to this. They probably get like really, really excited. Okay, I'm going to create some things. But I've been following you for a while, and one of the things that I find interesting is that you've been very critical about what people should and should not do with their in this space. Okay, so I like to share a few tweets that you
Sure.
have done before,
Yeah.
and I'd like you to maybe elaborate a little bit. Okay, so
Sure.
the first one is this one. So this guy basically took the entire Bored Ape collection
Yes.
and created this and says that, and he did that, and you tweeted this. You said that
Yes.
this kind of thinking needs to be eradicated. But
Yes.
isn't derivatives even isn't derivatives part of the parcel? Or what is this person doing wrong?
Sure. It's a good question. And I think it comes down for me to consideration of an original artist, right? So if you look at what the Bored Ape collection is, it's a generated collection, but an artist drew all of those individual traits, and then they were mixed together and put into a program that helped put out each of these 10,000 individual images. So with derivatives, the whole concept of having the IP license, what we originally paid for, right? Whether we bought in when we minted at 0.08, or whether we're buying in now at 50, 100, or 740 ETH, right? Is we're paying for the right to control, to some degree, that commercial license. So we get to say where our ape goes and doesn't go, and that's what we're essentially buying or paying for. So the whole point of derivatives is the power for us as creatives or owners of the ape, even if we don't necessarily have an artistic bone in our body, we are then able to empower other artists to share in the profits with us on these apes, right? So we can partner with an artist, they can draw our ape, they can do some crazy, picture such as this. And we can all share in the profit. But what this person did was essentially take the collection, put them through one of those automated apps,
You can find
where you add an
all that
effect,
on
right?
the
You can find it on the App Store or somewhere on the Droid, right? And he added this effect to all the apes, and then proceeded to list them all and profit 100% on his own. So what he essentially did was IP theft. You wouldn't be able to do this with anyone else's art or property and profit off of it 100%. But what he cleverly tried to do was occasionally approach an ape and say, "Oh well, since you caught me, essentially, I'll give you some of the percentage of this." But he had already prepared to execute, already minted a lot of them anyway without permission. So my point there was just, I like to think of things as I obviously fair is a relative term, but I try and think in terms of what would I try and step outside of the confines of my perspective as much as possible and think of what would be fair, even if I think it's not a good situation. And I just try and approach things from value. If you're providing a certain amount of value, there should be some energy exchange, whether it's money or another value or whatever that is, just from person to person, and not even about art or money, but just about really anything in life. So when I see people that sort of feed off of that energy or sort of siphon that energy, it feels very parasitic, and I don't like that. I don't think that's scalable. We really, if we all acted like that, we'd be in a terrible situation. So it's much better if he had approached everyone beforehand with the proposal. Maybe 10% would say yes, maybe 5%, maybe he makes a little bit of money and does another project with that. But the approach was just, it was
I
offensive.
see. I get it now. This person did not seek permission
Yeah.
beforehand to the owners at all. That
Yeah.
was the problem.
Yeah.
So this second example here, okay. So what's different with this example here? You were really excited about this one.
The main difference was permission. So this was an artist. It was an ape that, as I alluded to or mentioned earlier, I got to know some of the apes in the community very early on, and this was one of them. He goes by Crypto Painter on Twitter, and he's a very talented artist who actually works on major TV shows. But he didn't really expose his identity in the beginning. But he does these amazing pieces with using his skills that he uses on like Game of Thrones and other big shows, and does it with the apes because he enjoys the act of the artwork. It's his side project. So he came and basically said, "Hey, would you like me to use or who wants to be included in this art piece before he makes it?" And so he puts out a call, and of course, hundreds of apes want to be in it, and I was lucky enough to be chosen for this one. So, so you can see my cheetah ape, because I have several, is down there in the bottom where Zangief should be. So okay. He's got the driver's hat. But anyway, so there's just a fun rendition. Not only that, but he and I do this as well. When we include other apes in our projects, we pay them a percentage of the royalties in order to use their ape in the artwork. So for him, he and I actually kind of around the same time, or he did it first actually, and I borrowed the model, but he gives 20% to whatever apes. He splits it amongst them if they're included in an art piece. And so I do the same thing with the comic book covers and the comic books. For some, I do a flat percentage to make a cameo if you're not an ape. And then for apes, I take 20% of the book and I split it amongst the apes that are included.
I see. Okay, so this is very clear. Okay, I see a couple of things. Number one, he credits that like this omakase ape on the right.
Yeah.
That, this is my art piece, and it's based on an ape owned by Crypto Govia, right?
Yes.
And another thing that you just mentioned earlier is that because of NFTs, it's so easy to basically come into an agreement and says that, you know what, royalty, secondary market, if this thing does really well, and whether is it 100 editions, or whether is it trading volume, is whatnot, those royalties, will go back to those people at the original beginning, and all these promises are honored through the chain. Right.
Yes. Well, to some degree. A lot of these agreements right now are still very early. So there is a high demand for developers who write the smart contracts themselves. And so there is a big push from a lot of us to start incorporating those kinds of terms into the smart contracts. Because even as recently as weeks ago or days ago, it's still not the standard. So there are still some things that need to be worked on overall and sort of standardized, I think, before it becomes a truly safe space to do business, if that makes sense, when talking about splitting royalties or, these kinds of fake accounts too as well.
What about something like this? This is clearly a Nike's
shoe. Yeah. It is.
So, is something like this, okay, uh, but this is not an official Nike product. This person is
Correct.
not.
Correct.
He's just fan art. Is that correct? It's just fan art.
It's a what would be called, I guess, a mock-up. Yeah, he just created this. I think he created a template essentially that allows him to take the pictures of the apes and sort of put them on this specific shoe. Um, and so yeah, he was like, hey, I'm doing these shoes, and I was like, that's amazing. Do I get a Nike pair with my own ape? And then he was like, no, I'm not. I don't work for Nike. And I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
Well, I still love it, so I'll still share it. And then
Right. So yeah,
and
it's
then
creative.
I made sure to make that disclaimer too, just so people don't think it's real, or the Nike didn't, come after us.
Right.
But again, we're not selling these, right? If I had decided, cool, now I'm going to get these manufactured and now I'm going to sell them, then I'd essentially be doing the same thing that that I called out that first artist for.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So that's very, very interesting. Okay, the do's and do nots derivative side. Now I want to pivot again to another thing. Okay, which is talked about the kind of like talked about derivatives. Right now, let's talk a little bit about you are clearly very bullish, okay, about tech of NFTs and the change that it can bring. Right. This is one more tweet. One more tweet, okay, that you tweeted recently. Just had to pop back to remind people, okay, that this article, you were commenting on this article that Marvel
Yes.
Studio only pays the comic creators 5,000 for using their stories.
Yep.
Right? Okay. How is it that NFTs can affect change something like this?
So I think the biggest difference with what NFTs specifically are enabling is, you as the creator, for example, say the creator of this poster, right? Now those characters are not the creator of the poster's characters. Those are Disney or Marvel's characters, both their characters. So he gets paid X amount of dollars to make that poster, and that's it, right? With NFTs, if he were playing in an NFT sort of created, managed, financed intellectual property that somehow became a household name, like Bored Apes or CryptoPunks, or one of the larger ones that are starting to break through into the mainstream news, right? Then he would theoretically then at that point be able to actually do deals where he gets profits from that. So regardless of the flat fee, he could, instead of making a cap, make hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of dollars. So that's really the big difference is these big studios are going to, in no time at all, have to start competing with the allure of artists being able to go out, make their own Marvel universe and connect with an audience, bring it to them, and then they have unlimited potential for how much money they're able to make and also put back into their own creations, which is the incredibly amazing part of the whole thing.
Okay. Now there's a lot of questions that are coming in, but before we go into the public, get questions from the public, let's talk a little bit about your latest project that you're doing. So
Sure.
at the beginning, you were Bored Ape, which is part of a 10,000 collection. But now, okay, you have launched your own, okay, project, which has about, I think, approximately 10,000 or 11,000 of these characters.
Yep.
Are you giving the same kind of treatment, okay, to so
Yes, exactly. So that was one of the amazing things that I really appreciate about the space is I have the chance now to play with my apes in a way that very few people in history will get to say about a collection. So in much the same way, I feel that the power of a community of creators around the world, I've seen it firsthand with the apes. The creativity, the ambitions, all of it poured into a single collection is pretty amazing. So when we created Waifu Warriors, initially it was really to serve the women that don't have a lot of profile pictures in the NFT space. It's a largely male-dominated space. So when I was talking with both of my partners, we really were like, this makes so much sense, because one of my partners is a woman as well. And she was like, I love the apes, but I don't really like aesthetically, relate to it. So the idea was to do a collection that was female based, but we wanted to do something in a genre that we knew and were familiar with. So we went with anime, because that's why I grew up watching it. And one of my partners, grew up playing video games and watching anime too. So really we wanted to kind of do something that we thought would be fun, but also hand it to women creators too. So we have a writer that I can't say who she is yet, but she's worked on a very big Japanese intellectual property that's globally known as a showrunner. And so we're in the final stages of getting her on board, and we want to put a female writers room together to kind of take these characters and run with it. And so part of that journey for us is we're doing a game. We have a manga influenced like comic book coming out as well. And so we're giving the commercial IP rights to the people who buy into our collection as well, so they can actually kind of benefit from whatever hype or whatever mainstream success we can achieve with what we're trying to do. It will only help the entire community. So we just want to have fun with it, and it's kind of a throwback to the old fighting games. It's a player versus player. We're working on a play to earn model, so that players can actually, much like Axie Infinity, they'll be able to fight each other and also level up and earn things. It's going to be pretty cool. So we're really excited about it now.
Okay. So before we go into the public questions, what do you think is currently still lacking in the NFT space? What must improve?
I'd say probably accountability. And there's still a little ways to go with transparency and how we sort of gate that as a community, because I definitely see the value in some anonymity. Like there's reasons to be anonymous, and I get that they protect some people, and there's a lot of different things to consider. But on the other hand, when you're dealing with a large, even a collection like this, right? When you're talking about that kind of currency being exchanged or given to a group of people, it can be really tricky to navigate if you don't know who they are, if they're anonymous. You don't know if they're actually going to follow through with their delivery. And so there have been quite a few situations that have happened where people launched collections and then the founders either ended up disappearing or they ended up not being who they claimed to be. So I think there's a lot of room for figuring out sort of a more standard way of creating accountability. So I don't know if we'll ever get there. That may not even be a motivating factor for some, but I feel if there's enough people that have this sort of unified vision of how to utilize the technology to bring about a little more justice in the world, then I think we have a huge opportunity to make some pretty big changes, just the way things are.
I think you're referring to the incident where I think there was a female avatar project that was created by complete female founders. But that was not the problem. The problem was that they painted the picture like they were female founders. Is that correct?
What's that? It painted a picture. Sorry.
Sorry. I think you're referring to a one avatar project where it is female themed, right? Female empowerment themed.
Oh,
but that's not the problem, right? The problem is that they lied about, they painted the picture as if they were female founders.
Yeah, there was a project called the Fame Ladies, and that one was a situation where the the founders all turned. They marketed it as an all-female development team and marketing team that had created the collection, and they were one of the first to market. They beat us to market because our art took a very long time. It was a few months that we had to refine a lot of the details with one artist. It was amazing. So with that one, they ended up coming to market early. I don't know how long they worked on it, but it turned out that they were three men who were in their 20s, and they had just totally fabricated the entire narrative behind their project. So it ended up getting handed over. In the end, there's actually a great ending. A woman who is an ape actually took over the project. They handed over the smart contract. And so now she and a bunch of other people now kind of manage that project. So it's survived and it's kind of reborn in a lot of ways.
Okay. So now open the floor and let's answer some questions from the public. But before that, just want to reiterate a disclaimer that none of the content shared throughout here are financial investment advice. Please use this completely as a resource for education purposes only, that you understand the NFT space, what's happening, who's building what, why, okay, and what can we learn from this entire experiences from one another. All right. Also, the best answer, okay, that gets picked up today will base all the questions that get picked up today with names will be put on the wheel, spin it, okay, and one lucky winner will win this really cool RV swag pack. Okay, so let's get into the questions right now. All right. So, do you see any questions that you think that's interesting?
Let's see.
Let's start with Aziz Kevin Lee. He asks, when it comes to telling stories across multiple platforms, do you determine whether to create a comic universe via Kickstarter or minting NFTs? Or
It's a very good question. I think for me specifically, we're actually moving away from Kickstarter because the NFT space is so fast-paced and demanding. We've had to kind of divert a lot of our resources to that. But I think if you're starting off and you don't have an engaged community yet, or maybe you just have a small one, Kickstarter is a very powerful way because there's less barrier to entry. So with the NFTs, there's a whole education process behind it. But with Kickstarter, it's a little bit easier to just kind of go to the website, put in a credit card, and support the project. With NFTs, they need to buy Ethereum, download MetaMask, and then go open up an OpenSea account, and then they can, as a very basic, first few steps to access a lot of the more popular ones. It takes a little bit more of a learning curve. So I would start with Kickstarter and then do that. But for what we're doing, we're actually shifting more towards the NFT space and a lot of the gaming elements that we want to introduce.
okay, next question. Afik asks, do you know how many artists were involved in creating the 10,000 Bored Apes?
I don't know how many there were, actually. I believe it was one, possibly two, but I believe it was one. No, it's a good question. I actually don't know. I know that for our 11,111 project, it was one artist. So it is a painstaking process. It just takes a lot of time because you're drawing each individual, expression, and then it's a lot of asset drawing. It's a lot of design.
Are you saying that Waifu Warriors is just one artist?
That's correct. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think more like a comment. This is the question. Where do you draw the line that are people selling? Comment on that?
We're responsible for our own commercial IP license. So part of that is when we find our individual apes out there, we have to talk to our lawyers to take care of that. So we've been doing that at least for mine. Thankfully, it's a high enough number that when people are typically doing fraudulent apes, they start with one and go all the way to as far as they can. They usually get shut down around 500 or 1,000 before they ever get to the higher numbers. But we just pull them from the main account. It's the best way to look at it, or this is how I look at it, is there will always be fake Rolexes, and it's essentially the same thing. You're not going to ever be able to stop fake Rolexes from being made, but you can, if you see somebody on the street with one. Well, no, that doesn't work either, but. But you can shut them down with the proper legal action for digital misuse is the point. So, it's up to each individual ape to do that.
So as a Bored Ape owner yourself, are there any do you know if Bored Ape is going to be launching any games in
Uh, Well, the ape itself is a token, and that's the important thing to know is that it is basically access to their parts of their website. It gives you access to free NFTs. They gave us the apes, the dogs, sorry, for free, and then they recently dropped mutant serum for us, which was also free. But those items, because of the nature of the apes, they become valuable on a secondary market. But in terms of their actual roadmap for games, they had one mini game that we just played on their website for 3 days, which was pretty fun. But it was just on their website, so it was kind of keyboard, old school 2D scroller. But their new roadmap 2.0 is coming out shortly, and that it may or may not answer your question. So we're as much in the dark as ape holders as you are.
Okay. What's your view on Solana NFTs?
That's a question that keeps coming up a lot in the last few days, and I'm going to start heavily looking into Solana. I'm curious myself. I don't know enough about it because I've been so focused on Ethereum naturally from kind of with having the cryptocurrency itself. So I haven't really looked into Solana, but this is the third time I've heard about it in the last 12 hours. So I'm probably going to start looking into it later.
Okay. Last one. Okay, I think this one is a question. This one is more like a
okay, so for Bored Ape Yacht Club, one of the things that I'm working on right now is a burning and staking mechanism. And so some people may know this, some people may not. The Discord, generally speaking, is the best way to get all the leaks because I'll just sometimes randomly drop pictures or links and stuff. But we're working out a way right now to have a burning and staking mechanism, and we're working on a governance token. So I can't say much more about it yet, but we finally have the relationships, the partnerships, the teams accessible to us that we're going to be able to pull off something really cool where the Mint Division access tokens are going to be able to be burned, and you'll be able to trade those in for upgraded tokens. And these upgraded tokens are going to have multiple uses. They'll be able to use them for minting, or you'll be able to use them for various things in the metaverse too. So we have some really cool things cooking now that I can finally start to talk about. So we'll have our roadmaps dropping pretty soon. I've got multiple ones I'm juggling at the same time.
All right. So with that, okay, again, I'd like to say our 1 hour is up. Thank you, Ramon, okay, for spending the entire hour with us, especially, it's 3 a.m. right now where you are. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right. I thoroughly enjoyed this session, okay, learning from you, okay, about the different, what is it like, okay, being a person who has been in NFT, you have launched a comic, the do's and do nots in the NFT space, as well as what you're actually building right now, okay, being more, how do I say, content in the form of, that's digestible, which is in the form of comics, anime, and media. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
All right, so now it's time, okay, to reveal, okay, who is the winner of this Aave swag pack. What I'm going to do is I have inserted the names in here already of the potential winners, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, roughly about 15% chance, right? Okay. Good luck, everyone. All right. Okay. Congratulations, Andrew Sama, okay, for winning the Aave swag pack. Now, in order to claim your prize, you need to DM me. Remember, Bitcoin Malaysia and Access admins will never DM you first. Okay. You need to seek us out, DM us, okay, on the Facebook group, and give us your full name, mobile number, and shipping address so that Aave can ship this directly to your doorstep via DHL. All All right, please do that by Friday. Okay, so, if not, I'll be forced, okay, to give your prize to another person. Also, a few more announcements. Please, okay, remember, we have a proof of attendance token for all of you, okay, to claim. Go to the Discord channel, scan the QR code, go to the Discord channel, and scan put in the secret code, okay, DM the POAP bot. The secret code is Malacca 6, okay, which is a very popular tourist destination in Malaysia. Malacca 6, MELAKA 6, number 6, all right, and claim your POP token. Also, next week on Tuesday, we are having the blockchain bootcamp, okay, that is hosted by the government agency, MDEC. So, if you are interested in games, okay, you're gonna, there'll be talks, there'll be boot camps. You'll be hearing from people like Engine, Sandbox, Sky Mavis, YGG Games, right? Okay, this is something that can help you to level up and scale up, okay, your skills in this industry. So just to now, I think, okay, that tickets might be sold out soon. If there are no more tickets, okay, well, that's what it is. Okay, this is really, really, really high in demand. All right, and then that concludes for day number 3. Be back here tomorrow, day number 4, as we discover and learn about fractionalized NFTs and how that can be a very exciting thing indeed. Okay, because it will add liquidity to NFTs, and potentially, can you imagine putting your NFTs, okay, and getting a loan on it? That's DeFi slash NFTs. That's really a future that I am personally looking forward to. So see you guys back here at day number 3. So at day number 4, okay, of Southeast Asia NFT Week. Ramon, thank you again. Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.